Oh boy, man, do I wish I could get certain parts of this movie just like out of my head. Hello, everybody, I'm Anaji, and this is FMV Reviews. So today we're going to be talking about the Mexican film New Order. New Order basically tells a story. We're at this wedding of this fairly rich, affluent family while they're having a party, basically. And during that party, the not rich population decides to revolt basically, and you watch as all these various characters are caught within that revolt. That's a better plot synopsis than I thought, without giving away too much. I definitely have some problems with this film, but I do want to give it some of its kudos. I think this movie starts off pretty strong. When we're at the wedding and we're seeing all the various characters and the relationships, I actually think it's pretty solid. I definitely was intrigued. It has an interesting setup. There is an interesting way that they're showing the class divide between this like very rich affluent Mexican family and the poorer people. There's certain racial things in there too. I'll let you suss that out. But unfortunately, I think the movie runs out of steam as it goes to the end. That's why when I say it's stronger at the beginning, it really is. Also think this movie has some really striking cinematography. And yeah, like the way they use colors, especially the color green and the way it's shot. Yeah, it's pretty striking. I can't think of any movies that I've seen recently that look quite like this. But like I said, I wanted to give the kudos up front because I do have some problems that I think really squanders a lot of good that this movie has. Before I do, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. This movie loses almost all of its human elements in the beginning of the film and becomes a kind of film that, and I'm sure maybe you can relate to this, like when you're a young person, you're coming out of high school, especially if you're a dude, you like watching movies sometimes that just show you like really gross things. Like I used to watch the IFC channel a lot, or I used to seek out certain kind of like foreign horror films that just showed you really ugly, grimy stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I've been like a young teenager anyway, but I've lost my appetite for that kind of movie. I don't really like watching movies anymore that just show me unpleasant stuff, just to show me unpleasant stuff. And unfortunately, this movie slides into that after the first half. But also, I want to say that part of the reason I think this movie starts to fall apart, right, is basically you have it where the people revolt against the rich people, and you're watching while it's in the process of happening, right? But then this movie starts to do a strange thing where it starts to get very vague about. The movie's called New Order, right? So you're watching as after this revolt happens, this new sort of society pops up. But then the movie starts to get really vague with the details. It doesn't really seem to want to actually reckon with like, okay, let's say a revolt happens. What would it look like to see a new type of society? Or like, what would the steps be? What would need to happen in order to form this new type of society, especially in what's supposed to be some kind of like future version of Mexico? But the movie doesn't seem willing to deal with that kind of thing. And then it gets into what I'm going to say is probably like my biggest complaint with this movie is that the movie has an oddly conservative and nihilistic viewpoint on this whole thing. Like the movie's only really shot from the privilege of the rich, and I'm not gonna lie, rich white Mexican people there. And then unfortunately, whenever it depicts the poor people, it only depicts them as like violent savages. It's using certain imagery and stuff that has definitely been criticized in terms of the way that the poor are depicted, but this movie definitely leans into that. And then I couldn't help but feel that, especially once the movie's done, that it feels like the messaging of the movie is, hey, don't revolt, because if you think it's bad for you now, poor people, it could be even worse for you if you decided to do something and stand up for yourself. Which I just was going, wow, that's I can't get down with that messaging. No, I'm sorry. And it really undoes a good portion of this movie, to the point that even though I have a certain rating down here, I'm about to change it. Here we go. Okay, so in conclusion, I think New Order starts off promising. It's definitely dealing with some socially relevant stuff going on in terms of class inequality and racial dynamics. But unfortunately, the movie's unwillingness to deal with the difficulties of detail in terms of forming a new society, and also in its leaning of trying to maintain the inequality status quo that we sort of have right now, really took away any goodwill that I had towards the movie. So with that, I'm going to give New Order, I just changed the rating right now, I'm going to give New Order a 6 out of 10. If you're looking for something a bit different and you're willing to deal with some harsh disturbing imagery at times than I guess Watch New Order. But for me, this movie just feels incomplete and unwilling to really deal with the interesting, complicated subject matter that it's talking about. If you've seen this movie, let me know, especially if you speak Spanish, because I was luckily watching with someone who spoke Spanish, so he could give me certain details that I maybe wouldn't have known otherwise. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have some kind of argument that could maybe question what I said here. But until then, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.